My sister told everyone I was a failure. "You're just jealous I got married first," she yelled. I smiled and handed her divorce papers from her husband. The room went silent when. It all started at my nephew's birthday party. Ironically, a celebration for someone too young to remember the explosion that was about to go off in our family. My sister Rachel had made a grand entrance, as usual. Tight-fitted blazer, pearls that glimmered under the living room lights, and a voice sharp enough to cut stone. The party was for her son, but the spotlight never strayed far from her. Rachel had always been the golden child, the one with the Ivy League degree, the power marriage, the lifestyle that came straight out of a luxury magazine. And then there was me. Brian. The single, late-30s paralegal who never quite found his calling, according to her. Every family gathering was an opportunity for Rachel to sharpen her claws. I'd long since learned to smile through it. To laugh off the jabs like they didn't land. But today was different. Because today, I wasn't just a failure brother. I was holding an envelope in my coat pocket that could rip the designer rug right out from under her heels. She didn't know I'd been working with her husband, Matt. That he'd been meeting me behind her back for months, confiding in me, not just as a lawyer in training, but as the only person who really saw through the version of Rachel she sold to the world. And what a version it was. "I don't know how you do it," Rachel said loudly across the room, just as I was helping refill cups at the drink table. "Still single. Still figuring things out. Honestly, Brian, at your age, I'd be embarrassed." People chuckled awkwardly, unsure whether to laugh or look away. I glanced at our mother, who smiled uncomfortably into her cup. Dad was fiddling with his phone. No one would stop her. No one ever had. "You're just jealous I got married first," she added with a theatrical flick of her wrist, as if she just won an award. That's when I smiled. The kind of smile you practice in the mirror for months, waiting for the moment it fits. I reached into my coat pocket and handed her the envelope. Rachel looked at the envelope in her hand like it was a dead insect. Glossy red nails pinched the corner cautiously, her smug expression faltering for just a beat. "What is this?" she asked. "It's from Matt," I said, my tone even and calm. "He asked me to deliver it personally." Her smile twitched, like a wire snapping under tension. "Matt? What do you mean?" She let out a small, dismissive laugh. "What, is this a joke?" Around us, the room grew quiet. My aunt froze mid-sip of her wine. My cousin's toddler stopped bouncing on the couch. Even the balloons seemed to sag under the weight of the silence. "No joke," I said. "Matt's filing for divorce." The silence deepened. I could hear the slow tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway, the kind of silence that prickles your skin. My sister blinked. Once. Twice. She tore open the envelope with a jerky movement, scanning the first page. And then her face strained. It was all there. The drafted petition. The declaration of intent. A quiet, calculated summary of 5 years of emotional manipulation, gaslighting, and cruelty. "He asked me to handle the preliminary paperwork," I added, not looking away. "He wanted someone he could trust. So he came to me." "The failure," someone gasped. I didn't look to see who. Rachel's mouth opened, but no words came out. For once, she was utterly, beautifully speechless. She tried to laugh it off again, but it came out as a dry croak. This is insane. He wouldn't, why would he?" "Because he's tired," I said. "Of pretending. Of performing. Of living in a house where every word is a weapon." Her hand trembled. "He talked to you? About me?" "For months." I let that hang in the air, heavy and unrelenting. "He gave me the full picture, Rachel. And believe it or not, he didn't need much convincing." The silence wasn't awkward anymore, it was electric. Everyone was watching, the family dinner forgotten. My mom's hands were shaking. My dad looked up from his phone, stunned for the first time in years. Rachel stared at the papers as if they might rearrange themselves into something kinder. But they didn't. They never do. Rachel sat down, hard, like the air had been knocked out of her. The dining room chair squeaked under her sudden weight. She flipped through the papers as if speed reading might rewrite the outcome. I stood still, letting her silence stretch. I'd waited years for this moment, not out of spite, but for truth. For clarity. For the vindication that only silence can carry. Matt wouldn't do this, she said finally, her voice small and uneven. He wouldn't go behind my back. He did, I said simply. And honestly, he didn't want to at first. He hoped things could change. She glared at me, the venom returning. So this is your revenge? You've always hated me. I shrugged. I stopped hating you years ago, Rachel. I just started watching. Quietly. Closely. And Matt. He saw it too. Eventually. My father stood up then, his chair scraping the hardwood. Brian, this is a family party. You couldn't have waited? I looked at him, calm and cold. When should I have waited? After the next time she called me a failure in front of you? After another backhanded toast at Thanksgiving? He looked away. Rachel was still gripping the envelope like it might morph into an apology. I gave you 100 chances to back off, to just let me be. I continued. But you needed me to be small so you could feel big. And Matt? He just wanted peace. She looked up, her eyes wild now, darting across the room like someone searching for an exit. Mom? She said weakly. But Mom said nothing. Because for once, there was nothing to say. The room was frozen in a strange, suspended animation, eyes darting, forks resting midair, the faint buzz of a ceiling light humming above like an anxious fly. It was Rachel who broke the silence. You've been poisoning him. She spat, standing so quickly the chair behind her skidded across the hardwood. You've been whispering in Matt's ear. That's what this is. You're jealous. I didn't flinch. Jealous of what? The fighting? The performative dinners? The fake smiles? Her face flushed crimson. You always wanted what I had. She hissed. I took a step forward. I wanted respect, Rachel. From my own family. I wanted not to be humiliated every holiday. That's it. Then I turned toward the rest of the family, scanning their faces, some stunned, some ashamed, some quietly relieved. And while you were tearing me down every chance you got, Matt was sitting on the couch with me after family dinners. Quiet. Defeated. Asking if there was a way out. Rachel's lips parted like she wanted to object, but I wasn't finished. He told me about the insults. The manipulation. The way you'd withhold affection and then blame him for not loving you right. The threats to ruin him if he ever left. No, stop. She muttered, backing away, but I kept going. He told me everything, Rachel. Not because he wanted to hurt you, but because he couldn't breathe anymore. Rachel sank into her seat again. This time slower. The fight was draining from her face. Her arms dropped to her sides, and she looked like a marionette whose strings had finally snapped. For the first time in my life, my sister looked small. The air had turned heavy, almost reverent, like the moments after a thunderclap. Rachel sat there, staring through the divorce papers like they might disappear if she blinked hard enough. I watched the faces around the room shift, my uncle, wide-eyed and leaning forward, my cousin Lindsay biting her lip, my mother pale, wringing a napkin in her hands. And then Matt stepped into the room. I hadn't expected him to show up. He was supposed to stay away, let the paperwork speak. But there he was, standing in the archway between the kitchen and living room, holding a set of car keys in one hand and something softer in the other, resolve. Rachel, he said quietly. She flinched like his voice had burned her. What are you doing here? He took a breath. I wanted to be here when the truth came out. I owed Brian that much. I owed myself that much. Her voice cracked. You really went behind my back? With him? Matt nodded. He was the only one who actually listened. Who didn't pretend. She stood, trying to regain her footing, her status, the edge she'd always carried like a crown. So what? You both plotted this? To embarrass me? At my son's birthday? No, Matt said, stepping closer. I asked for help. And Brian gave it. Because he's decent. Because he knows what it's like to be made to feel worthless in your presence. That was the final blow. Not from me, but from the man who'd once promised her forever. Rachel's hands trembled. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. The crown was gone. Rachel didn't cry. I half expected her to. Or scream, or storm out, or pull the usual theatrics she'd mastered over the years. But she just stood there, shaking slightly, as if the scaffolding she'd built around her life had finally collapsed. Maybe it had. Matt looked at her for a long moment, no rage, no triumph, just quiet sadness. I didn't want this to be public, he said softly. But you left me no choice. Every time I tried to talk to you, you shut me down. Every time I asked for space, you called it weakness. Rachel dropped her gaze. I turned back toward the table. My cousin had quietly taken my nephew upstairs, shielding him from the tail end of what would surely be remembered as the most memorable birthday party in family history. The rest of the family sat like statues. No one moved. No one spoke. My mom finally broke the silence. Brian, why didn't you tell us? I met her eyes. Would you have believed me? She looked away. No answer. That was answer enough. And then, unexpectedly, my dad cleared his throat. Son, I didn't know things were that bad between you two. They've always been bad, I said. You just didn't want to see it. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For once, I had nothing to prove. I had nothing to explain. Matt turned toward me and placed a hand on my shoulder. Thanks, man. I couldn't have done this without you. You didn't have to do it alone, I said. After Matt left, everything moved in slow motion. People murmured to each other in corners, unsure whether to stay or go. The birthday balloons floated silently above a table full of untouched cake and party hats, a cruel reminder that the day had started as a celebration. Rachel remained seated, her arms crossed tightly against her chest, not from anger this time, but something closer to shame. I stood quietly near the mantel, watching her, studying the way her hands clenched and unclenched, the way her foot tapped against the hardwood like she needed to run but didn't know where. For years I imagined this moment as a loud, dramatic collapse. But now that it was here, it wasn't noise that defined it. It was quiet. That's when my mom approached me again. Her voice softer this time, almost fragile. You really helped him, with the divorce? I nodded. Every form. Every phone call. Every night he sat on my couch just trying to make sense of the mess. She looked down. He should have come to us. He tried, I said, not harshly. But you were too busy watching Rachel's highlight reel. None of you saw what went on behind the curtain. Dad joined us, arms folded. His voice was lower now, too. So, all those times you left early from family dinners. I was meeting with Matt, I said. Or recovering from her latest public roast. He nodded slowly. We failed you. It was the first time I'd ever heard him say anything remotely like that. And maybe he meant it, or maybe it was just something people say when their illusions start to crack. But either way, it felt like something long overdue had finally been spoken aloud. Meanwhile, Rachel still hadn't moved. And I knew why. This wasn't just a divorce. This was a reckoning. Because the truth was, Rachel didn't just build her life on love and ambition, she built it on comparison. On dominance. On control. Her success had never been about achieving, it had always been about winning. And I had always been her scoreboard. The single brother. The career drifter. The punchline. But now I had shown that I was more than just what she had painted me to be. I was the person her husband trusted. I was the one who helped him leave. And I hadn't done it to hurt her. I'd done it because he needed someone, and I had finally learned that I didn't owe Rachel my silence. She stood at last, finally meeting my eyes. You've wanted to destroy me for years, she said. Her voice cracked. Well, congrats. You got what you wanted. I stepped closer, but there was no venom in my voice. I never wanted to destroy you, Rachel. I wanted you to stop treating me like I was disposable. I held her gaze. And now you finally see what it feels like. Rachel didn't say anything after that. She just stood there, blinking rapidly, her face a mask cracking from the inside. I saw something then I hadn't seen in years, not arrogance, not disdain, but fear. Not of me. Of being seen. For the first time, she realized she couldn't control the narrative anymore. The house was thinning out now. Family members began filtering toward the door, offering rushed goodbyes or awkward pats on the back. No one looked directly at Rachel. They didn't know how. I moved to the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of water. My hands were steadier than I expected. For so long, I thought that standing up to her would feel like setting off a bomb. But now I realized, it was more like dismantling one. Wire by wire. Word by word. And now, she was standing in the wreckage. She followed me into the kitchen, slower, her heels clicking against the floor like distant echoes of the confident woman she used to project. You know, she said, not looking at me. There was a time I looked up to you. I turned slightly surprised. When? When we were kids. Before high school. You used to build those little clay cities and explain how each part worked. It was dumb, but you made everything sound so real. I remembered that. I used to build those models on the floor of my bedroom while she hovered nearby, pretending not to care. I wanted to be like that, she said. To make things make sense. I leaned against the counter. So when did I become the enemy? She exhaled. I don't know. Somewhere between Mom telling me I was the smart one and Dad asking me to help fix you. I guess it just felt good. Being needed. Being the one who had it all figured out. Even if it meant tearing me down? I asked. She didn't answer right away. She just stared at the kitchen window, the light from the backyard casting shadows on her face. I didn't think you'd fight back, she admitted. I thought you'd always be safe. Background. That stung in a way I wasn't expecting. But I nodded. That's the thing about background characters, I said. Eventually, they write their own scenes. She gave a short, humorless laugh. Well, I guess this one's mine. Maybe, I said. But you're not the only one in the shot anymore. We stood there in silence for a moment. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for, an apology. A breakdown? Closure? But what I got was something else. She looked at me, and for once, I saw the real Rachel. The one behind the trophies and snide remarks and champagne glass smiles. She was tired. Tired of performing. Tired of defending a life that looked perfect on paper but was held together with duct tape and denial. Do they know? She asked finally. Mom and Dad? About the real you? She gave me a sharp look. I softened. They know enough. Maybe more than they're ready to admit. Rachel looked down at the counter, her fingers tracing the rim of an empty glass. And then she whispered, I don't know who I am without it. Without all this. You'll find out, I said quietly. Just like I did. She nodded once, like she wasn't sure she believed me. And then she left the kitchen. No fanfare. No door slam. Just the fading sound of her heels and the whisper of her pride slipping off her shoulders. After Rachel left the kitchen, the silence settled in again, but this time, it was different. It didn't sit on my shoulders like it used to. It didn't squeeze my chest. It just was. I stepped outside. The late afternoon air was cooler than I expected, the kind of breeze that carries the smell of old wood and pine needles. I leaned on the porch railing, looking out at the cars lined up along the curb. A few guests still lingered on the lawn, whispering in tight circles, pretending not to glance back at the house. I watched a little kid run across the grass with a balloon trailing behind him, laughing. The sound seemed foreign after everything that had just happened. Then I heard the door creak open behind me. It was Matt. He came out quietly, joining me at the railing without a word. For a moment, we just stood there. Two men bound by a strange, mutual grief, his for a marriage that had died long before the paperwork, and mine for a family dynamic that had defined me for too long. I didn't want to hurt her, he said. I know, I replied. Neither did I. Not really. He looked out toward the road. But some things can't be saved by pretending. We let that hang in the air for a while. It was the kind of truth that doesn't need embellishing. He turned to me. You were the only one who saw it. You always saw through her. I wish I hadn't, I admitted. I used to think maybe if I ignored it long enough, she'd change. That if I just stayed out of her way, she'd leave me be. Matt gave a short nod. That's what I did too. With her. With her family. I turned to him. You were a good husband, Matt. Don't let anyone rewrite that. He gave me a tired smile. You're a better brother than she deserved. We shook hands, and then he pulled me into a quick hug, the kind men give when words aren't enough. After he left, I stayed on that porch a long while. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting the neighborhood in long shadows. Eventually, my parents came outside. My mom stood on the steps, arms crossed, her face unreadable. My father joined her, his expression tense. They didn't say anything at first, but then Mom finally spoke. She's not perfect, she said softly. But she's still your sister. I know, I said. I didn't stop loving her. I just stopped letting her decide what I'm worth. That seemed to hit her. You didn't deserve the way she treated you, my dad added. We should have seen it. I looked at them. Really looked. These were the people who had shaped both of us, who had turned blind eyes for too long, maybe because it was easier. Maybe because they needed her to be the success story. I don't want anything from you, I said gently. I just want you to stop pretending it didn't happen. My mother nodded slowly. We won't pretend anymore. It wasn't a full apology. But it was something. And for once, that was enough. I went home that night and sat on the floor of my apartment in the dark, letting the stillness settle in. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel bitter. I felt free. Years of being labeled, diminished, compared, they'd finally lost their grip. That night, I slept better than I had in years. It's strange, really. How a single moment can shift the balance of a lifetime. How one envelope, one line, one truth spoken out loud can finally tip the scales. I don't regret what I did. I didn't do it to humiliate Rachel. I did it to stop hiding. For years, I thought staying silent made me strong, that enduring her mockery, her dominance, was the high road. But silence isn't strength when it lets someone rewrite your story. So if you're in that place, always the quiet one, always the background character, I'll tell you this. You have every right to speak. To take up space. To be seen. Rachel will rebuild, or she won't. That's hers to figure out. But me? I'm just getting started. And I no longer need anyone's permission to be the main character.